So welcome to the GMC annual membership meeting. I'd like to welcome all new GMC members to today's meeting and into membership. Lori Langholz, BDO. Song? No? Okay. No song today. Kat Ravenstein, American Red Cross. For Kat. Kat's not here yet. Let's welcome Kat in as well. We look forward to getting to know you and Kat, and look forward to having you contribute to the GMC and some great networking, and appreciate your leadership in advance. So thanks for being here. Before we introduce today's hosts and speakers, I'd like to conduct the business portion of the annual meeting, which is undoubtedly why you've chosen to sit down early and enjoy your lunch. Pursuant to written notice previously mailed to all members, I hereby call to order the business meeting portion of the 2026 annual meeting of the GMC. All of you received a copy of the minutes from the 2025 annual meeting via email. A copy is also on the screen. Will be, everybody's got it. Do I have a motion to dispense with the reading of the minutes and move to approve? Seconded? All in favor of approving the 2025 annual meeting minutes, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? The ayes prevail. The motion is passed. I'm also happy to report that the GMC had a balanced budget in 2025, and our annual audit is being conducted by Riley, Penner & Benton. The GMC Board of Directors approved the 2026 budget. The vast majority of GMC operations are supported by member dues, in addition to your continued strategic engagement, and we appreciate your commitment to the organization. Dues notices have been mailed out to members. We're currently at about 50% of the dues being collected. If you have not yet paid your dues for the year, please send in your checks. Also, the following slate is being presented for election to the Board of Directors for the term ending in February 2029. They are indicated in the first column on this slide. Thanks, Heather. The other columns indicate those continuing service for their terms. Myself, Dan Bader, Penny Kelsey, David Lupar, Greg Marcus, and Steve Radke. Do I have a motion to accept the slate as presented by the Board of Directors? Second? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes prevail. The motion is passed. Now, I'd like to invite our host, Amy Linder, to the podium to touch on today's topic of civic engagement. Thank you.
Welcome, for many of you, welcome back to the Johnson Controls Volunteer Center at United Way. I'm especially happy that we are hosting this conversation about civic engagement, a topic that is central to our work at United Way, and I believe central to the GMC. I have the great pleasure of being the keynote speaker at last year's Women Influence event, and the theme of that talk was Be the Somebody. And where that came from was how very often I hear somebody say, you know, somebody should really ... and then fill the blank in with whatever topic is important to that person. And I will skip the encore performance and just get to the punchline to say, we are the somebodies. And I don't just mean the incredibly resourced, smart, caring people in this room. I mean every person in every corner of our community has the power to do something about an issue that's important to them. And that's pretty incredible. That is exactly what we do at United Way. We pull together a lot of somebodies who care and get us rowing in the same direction to help make a huge impact in our community on big, important issues. Right now for us, that's homelessness, youth mental health, employment, and the digital divide. But even with our great progress on all of those, we know that there is a lot to do. And that's why I'm especially grateful to the GMC to help us continue to have these important conversations. Thanks for being with us. We hope to welcome you back soon for more important conversations like this, or for a volunteer experience with your team, or maybe both. And thank you again.
Thank you, Amy, and thank you again for hosting us. And you are the someone at United Way. And I know many of you in this room are generous donors, generous supporters, some board members, proud to be a board member of the United Way. And I echo Amy's comments. Everyone in this room actively participates and engages. But it takes a village to raise a family, and we have a large family in Milwaukee and in our region that we need to care for. And so this topic today is very poignant and timely. I would like to begin my remarks today by remembering our friend Betsy Brenner, who passed away on January 23rd. Betsy was a longtime GMC board member, co-chair of our Fiscal Strength Committee, and a tireless advocate for Milwaukee community. Alongside David Gay, Betsy co-chaired our Fiscal Strength Committee and led much of our work around vehicular strength. Up until a week before her passing, she continued to share thoughtful insights and with great selflessness made sure I was supported as I stepped into this role. Her commitment never wavered. Beyond GMC, Betsy dedicated her time and leadership to numerous community organizations across Milwaukee, including the Medical College of Wisconsin, where she served as board chair, the Boys and Girls Club, ABCD after breast cancer diagnosis, Milwaukee Film, Planned Parenthood of Wisconsin, and Children's Wisconsin. Betsy also lived an extraordinary journalism career, including 12 years as publisher of the Milwaukee Journal Sentinel, during which the paper earned 3 Pulitzer Prizes. I was there the first time they won it. I gotta tell you, it was quite remarkable and pretty amazing. Betsy was fierce, selfless, and a true fighter, both for our community and in her own life. May she be remembered for the lasting impact she made on Milwaukee, and for every moment she challenged us to be better. And today's topic is one of those. I would now like to take a moment to share a few strategic updates on the GMC. Work continues around youth engagement for summer 2026. The team is meeting with one MKE to discuss the development of a new website that will serve as our centralized hub for summer activities. Parents and youth will be engaged to provide feedback, ensuring that the site is both user-friendly and valuable informational resource. The GMC Infrastructure Committee remains actively engaged in a number of projects. Despite federal funding challenges and freezes over the past year, the city was approved for a National Avenue grant focused on roadway dieting to reduce speeding and reckless driving. Additionally, Wisconsin DOT secured $15 million to advance the rehabilitation of Interstate 41, including the addition of noise barriers between West Burleigh Street and West Silver Spring Drive in northwest Milwaukee County. The Fiscal Strength Committee also continued to assist the city in addressing recommendations from the operational review. As shown on the screen, the group was organized into 2 task forces focused on shared services with municipal partners on vehicular-centric policies. Before I introduce our today's meeting, I believe Kat, our new member, just joined. So Kat is the new CEO of the American Red Cross, and want to make sure all of you get a chance to meet her. I'd now like to introduce today's topic, civic engagement, trust, and regional alliance. As it was stated, everyone in this room understands the importance of community and civic engagement. What truly makes a difference, however, is how we pass that commitment on to our peers, our employees, and our broader community. Today, we are joined by leaders who are advancing this work in meaningful ways. Joseph Arroyo, Executive Director of Cities Forward, is with us today. Cities Forward is a New York-based organization dedicated to helping cities prioritize participation in our democracy. Joseph brings extensive experience from both campaign and nonprofit spaces and will share a national perspective on how strong community engagement often reflects on a community's overall success. Joining Joseph for the fireside chat are Joanne Anton, President and CEO of Her Cold Philanthropies, and Angela Damiani, CEO and co-founder of Milwaukee, who will share insights from their collective experiences in Milwaukee. We will also hear from Mayor Johnson about the city's commitment to civic engagement. However, before we begin, we're pleased to welcome Rima, I apologize, Alive. Excellent. Thank you. Vice President and General Counsel of Infrastructure at Microsoft. Rima is in Milwaukee this week and has graciously offered her time to speak with the GMC about Microsoft's investment in Wisconsin. In her role, Rima helps ensure that Microsoft customers worldwide have the cloud and AI infrastructure capacity needed to meet their goals. Her work includes land and power acquisition, the construction and operation of data centers, regulatory compliance, and development and delivery of hardware infrastructure. Please welcome Rima.
Hi, everybody. Good afternoon. And first of all, thank you so much for giving me the time to speak with you here today. As I was introduced, my name is Rima O'Leary. I'm a corporate vice president and general counsel at Microsoft. I've been there for 18 years. And most recently, I've taken on a role supporting our infrastructure legal affairs team. And that is really the group that is building data centers, both in the United States, in Wisconsin, as well as around the world. And though I've been at Microsoft for 18 years, I'm actually a Wisconsin native. I grew up in Appleton. My family is now down in Economowoc. I just got to spend a great weekend with them, celebrating my nephew's birthday, going skiing, and watching my Seattle Seahawks win the Super Bowl. That being said, I am still a Packers fan, but when they don't make it, the Seahawks are great to root for. So I wanted to share with you a few insights and updates on our project down in southeastern Wisconsin, which I'm sure many of you are aware of. And I also wanted to give you some insight into how we think about development and a new initiative that we've launched called Community First AI Infrastructure. So to start, what are we doing in Wisconsin? So as many of you know, we purchased land down in southeastern Wisconsin in the village of Mount Pleasant, in the site that was originally developed and designed for Foxconn. We announced our first data center back in 2024, and we are almost at the point of turning it operational. Once that goes live, we will begin serving customers from Wisconsin. We have also started our expansion. And so next door to that data center, we have started work on a second data center, which we expect to be operational in 2027. And 2 weeks ago, we submitted a site plan for an expansion project on land northwest and immediately adjacent to our construction site. That expansion will represent an additional 15 data centers across 2 campuses. And so we're looking forward to getting started on that portion of the expansion later this year. Now, we also own additional land in Mount Pleasant and land in Kenosha that we've purchased for the purpose of data center development, but we don't have an immediate development plan for either of those areas at this point in time. Collectively, these investments represent multi-billion-dollar investments by Microsoft in the state of Wisconsin. That said, none of this work and its benefits can happen without trust. That means listening to the concerns that have been expressed by community members about water, about energy usage, about being transparent, and doing what we say we will do. And in fact, the feedback that we've received from communities across Wisconsin has helped forge the blueprint of national commitments that our company president and fellow Wisconsinite Brad Smith announced in early January in Washington, D.C. As you can see up on the screens, our Community First AI Infrastructure Initiative is rooted in a really straightforward principle. When we build at scale, we believe we have a responsibility to strengthen the communities where that infrastructure lives. The initiative makes 5 bold commitments. First, we'll pay our way to ensure our data centers don't increase your electricity prices. We'll minimize our water use and replenish more of your water than you use. We'll create jobs for your residents. We'll add to the tax base for your local hospitals, schools, parks, and libraries. And we'll strengthen your community by investing in local AI training and nonprofits. Now, these commitments only matter if they show up in real action and in the real outcomes that communities can see, measure, and feel over time. And so what does that look like here in Wisconsin? Well, first of all, I'll touch just very briefly on all of them. But first of all, with respect to energy, we are actively supporting a special electricity rate that is currently under review by the Public Service Commission. We've been working with We Energies and ATC for years to make sure that we have the power supply that we will need. And we are also working to make sure that every kilowatt hour that comes from fossil fuels to power our data centers is matched with carbon-free energy on the regional grid. And so, for example, down in Portage County, we've invested in a solar farm that ultimately will generate about 250 megawatts of solar power onto the regional grid. With respect to water, we are continuing to advance the design of our data centers and our cooling technology to ensure that it is far more efficient today than it has been in past generations. We're committed to using only what is needed. What that means in southeastern Wisconsin is closed loop technology, meaning you fill a sort of a circular loop, a circular cooling system with water once. That water stays in that system, continues to recirculate, and cools the data center so that we are not continuously drawing from the local water systems. The Mount Pleasant data center is currently expected to use around 2.8 million gallons of water. Now that sounds like a lot for all of us. We don't regularly look at our water usage, but 2.8 million gallons is really about what it takes to build 4 Olympic-sized swimming pools. Ultimately, it's not a whole lot of water at the end of the day. When it comes to jobs, you can think of jobs in sort of 2 different categories. One is jobs during construction. How many jobs are being created by the construction of these data centers? Second is what happens when the data centers go operational. When it comes to construction, we anticipate that about 10,000 construction workers will touch one of our sites during the construction process. What that amounts to is probably a peak somewhere around 3,000 construction workers on the site, for an average of about 2,000 per day. When it comes to operations, our first data center will employ up to 500 full-time employees. We've already started hiring and have 375 people currently hired, and we're going to continue to fill out our operations staff. When the second data center comes on site, we're expecting to add more to that for up to about 800. And you can see that as we continue to build out operations and build out our data centers, we're going to continue to add to that staff. Now, when it comes to operations, these jobs are unique, right? There's not a lot of people who know how to operate data centers. And so what we've done to make sure that we have a local talent pipeline is to partner with Gateway Technical College and to build up a data center academy so that we're training people locally so that they are ready to take these jobs when they're available. And then finally, or sorry, not finally, but on the tax front, we are already the largest taxpayer in Racine County, and we expect that our property taxes will continue to rise as we add additional buildings and our data centers begin to come online. Finally, on the skilling front, across Wisconsin, we've partnered with more than 40 community organizations to ensure that our investments in AI skilling are reaching real people and not just headlines. That amounts to more than 500,000 residents statewide with deep engagement in Racine County. In addition, we partnered with the University of Wisconsin in Milwaukee, and I see former chancellor here today. In large part with his help, we stood up an AI co-innovation lab, working with Titletown Tech and the Wisconsin Economic Development Corporation. That lab is bringing in manufacturers around the state to work with them on proof of concept for how they can apply AI to the work that they do. We want to make sure that the manufacturers of this state remain at the cutting edge of manufacturing as it is transformed by AI. In short, Microsoft is committed to ensuring that Wisconsin remains a center of excellence in the growing AI economy. For us, success is simple and measurable. Wisconsin is stronger because we are here. We're proud to invest in Wisconsin, and we take seriously the trust that comes with that investment. This is, at the end of the day, long-term work, and we are just getting started. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me. My name is Joseph Arroyo. I'm the Executive Director of Civic. We're a national nonprofit that works with local government and civic institutions to strengthen civic health and increase democratic participation. I spend my time working with cities across the country, including here in Milwaukee, helping leaders think about how trust is built, how participation is sustained, and how communities and institutions work better together over time. And what I want to share today is not a political argument, it's an operational one. It's about how cities function, how trust is maintained, and why civic engagement is becoming a strategic issue for business leaders, whether you guys have asked for it or not. If I were to ask you guys to talk about civic engagement, or anyone on the street, a lot of people will talk about voting. And that's not wrong, but it's not the full story. Civic engagement is about the way that we show up and how our communities work together to solve problems. It's about people taking responsibility for where they live and their places and believing that their participation matters. People need to have the knowledge and skills to actually believe in their agency, and that's what civic engagement really is. Voting is a key indicator for civic health, but it's not the only one. Other indicators include public service, volunteerism, charitable giving, mutual aid, community problem solving, and the kind of public-private partnerships that are happening in this room today that you all do yourselves. As business leaders, you guys are being asked to take and step into civic spaces that might not feel like your area of expertise. And the discomfort is understandable. I get it. I don't want to do your jobs either. And civic engagement does not require you to be on public or to have all the answers. It builds on what you guys already do well. Stewardship, long-term thinking, and investing in places where you do business, where talent lives, and where markets depend on trust and stability. Unfortunately, in cities across America, fewer people feel connected to the institutions that are trying to serve them. Civic participation in public life is becoming more episodic, more transactional, and driven by frustration rather than a sense of shared responsibility. It's not simply individual disengagement, it reflects weakened civic infrastructure. National research from Pew shows that trust in government and public institutions are at an all-time low. One visible symptom of this erosion is voter participation, particularly in our cities. Urban turnout regularly trails statewide averages, and participation drops severely outside of presidential elections. But voting, again, is not the problem itself, it's an indicator. When people don't volunteer, they don't trust institutions, and they don't believe their time or voice will matter, participation declines across the board. This matters because civic engagement is how systems learn and adapt. When feedback loops break down, decisions are made with less input, trust erodes, and outcomes shift further from community needs. Over time, cities lose influence in state and federal decision-making, and the ability to plan and execute is effectively weakened. For business leaders, this erosion is tangible, has tangible consequences. It affects public-private partnerships, workforce stability, and the durability of global investments. Communities that do not trust institutions are harder to partner with, harder to serve, and more vulnerable to instability. Cities Forward was created because of this. We saw this moment and we believe in our work. And it started with a simple promise. When cities invest in relationships, clear points of connection, consistent follow-through, engagement becomes more effective and more predictable. Residents are able to navigate systems, institutions gain clear insights into community needs, and collaboration becomes more easier and durable. We work alongside local governments and civic institutions to then connect and coordinate what already exists. The goal is not to replace programs or duplicate efforts, but to reduce silos and make engagement a normal part of how cities operate. When that happens, participation becomes less reactive, trust begins to rebuild, and cities are better positioned to plan, grow, and adapt over the long term. In 2022, Cities Forward partnered with 5 cities. We were in Detroit, Minneapolis, Milwaukee, Philadelphia, and Atlanta. I had to remember that. And we partnered with them with a really straightforward idea. How do we leverage the trust and reach cities already have? We wanted to test whether cities could do that and interact with residents through services, communication, and trusted messages to encourage participation in a visible, coordinated, and nonpartisan way. What we learned was important. When engagement comes to cities, it felt coordinated rather than fragmented, and residents paid attention. That year established our proof of concept. It showed that cities can play a meaningful role in citizen participation, and that partnership across governments and nonprofits to trusted institutions matter. It clarified what was already missing: deeper relationships, better coordination, and engagement that extended beyond By 2024, it was clear participation could sustain fully focused outreach only. So we began testing a broader approach in select cities and treating voting as an outcome of civic connection and not a starting point. In Milwaukee, we formed one MPE, which many of you know about and have experienced yourselves. In Philadelphia, we created One Philly Connect. We went deeper by forming coalitions that brought together city agencies, the libraries. For everyone that doesn't know, librarians are stewards of state health. So, big librarian, you guys have an amazing library system in the city. Community organizations and service providers. The goal was simple: make it easier for residents to engage with the city and trusted institutions in their daily lives. In those 2 cities, engagement expanded beyond elections. Residents were connected to services, benefits, and community resources, while also receiving reliable election information. That work happened through community events, libraries, trusted local partners, and settings where people already felt comfortable and supported. At the same time, in Detroit, and Atlanta, and Houston, we continued with our 2022 path, focusing on city-led, nonpartisan outreach during an election. Taking together 2024 was not a reset, it was a learning year. It allowed us to test 2 approaches in parallel and confirm a central lesson. Sustained participation requires more than messaging, it requires infrastructure. By 2025, it was clear to us that deepening relationships mattered more than expanding quickly. In Milwaukee, rather than adding new programs, we focused on better understanding community needs and then strengthening existing partnerships. Many of our coalition partners are already trusted anchors in their neighborhoods. They're not new messengers, and they're organizations residents already rely on. That trust shaped how we move forward our work. One example of our work actually here in Milwaukee was in response to food insecurity after a local grocery store closed. A trusted community partner came to us to request support for a community fridge, but because we had the coalition in place, we were able to do more than fund a single intervention. We brought together organizations already working on food access and relied on their guidance to coordinate a broader response. The result was a community-powered fridge supported by multiple partners rather than one organization acting alone. Because that effort was visible, trusted, and grounded in real need, it attracted additional investments. one of your local aldermen provided additional funding to bring more community fridges to the neighborhood while long-term solutions were being developed. That experience reinforced an important lesson. When stakeholders are convened, trust exists, and coordination is intentional, cities can respond to immediate needs without losing sight of the long-term solutions. In 2026, we're applying those lessons more intentionally. We recognize that resources are stretched thin. City departments are under extreme pressure. Community organizations are carrying heavy loads. And the answer is not asking more for already overextended partners, but to better align existing resources and ensuring nothing is left on the table. This is where our outreach consortium comes in. We're formalizing how our coalition partners coordinate outreach, share capacity, and extend trust on behalf of one another. The goal is not to centralize control, but to make existing work more effective and more visible. At its core, our work reflects a simple reality. Cities cannot do this alone. Your city government has a deficit. They cannot solve these problems alone, and neither can a single organization. But when trusted partners are aligned, coordination replaces fragmentation, cities are better positioned to respond, adapt, and lead. I want to close by speaking directly of the role of business community. I know there's significant pressures on businesses right now, from employees, customers, and the broader public, to be seen as civically responsible. Many leaders want to respond, but I can feel like a minefield. Businesses are not expert on voter engagement or civic programming. Choosing silence can hurt employee morale and retention, but missteps can also create real risk. Research from Harvard has shown that employees increasingly expect their employers to engage in civic issues in a credible, values-aligned way, and that avoidance can undermine trust and workplace culture. This is why trusted, nonpartisan partners matter. Businesses do not need to invent solutions or take political positions. They are credible partners who understand civic engagement and help them meet the moment in ways that are responsible, practical, and low risk, while allowing leaders to stay focused on running their companies. That's where organizations that I've partnered with, like Committee of 70 in Philadelphia, have come in. Committee of 70 is a good governance organization that's comprised of business leaders in the Philadelphia area. And they run a program called Revote. They work directly with employers to help foster a healthy culture of civic engagement in the workplace. At a minimum, Revote helps organizations support voting by providing clear, easy to share information about voting dates and deadlines, offering templates and ideas for civic holidays such as National Voter Registration Day, hosting virtual or in-person workshops led by trusted experts on what is on the ballot and what the information they need to vote successfully, and supporting civic time off policies, including time to vote or time to serve as a poll worker. For workplaces, at this point, we're not here to tell businesses what to do and what to believe, but it helps when you show up responsibly, credibly, and confidently in a moment where expectations are high and trust is fragile. Choosing silence carries its own risk. Again, it can erode employee trust, weaken morale, and contribute to the broader disengagement many of our institutions are facing. Partnering with trusted nonpartisan organizations allows businesses to fulfill their civic responsibility in ways that strengthen their workforce, their communities, and the institutions that rely on them. This is an opportunity for y'all and an invitation to join one MP and support the work that we've been doing. And now it's my pleasure to welcome to the stage Milwaukee CEO Angela DeMonte and her Philanthropies President and CEO Joe Arroyo.
Oh, wonderful, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. All right, well, I am Angela Damiani and I am the CEO of Milwaukee. And we are an engagement agency based here in Milwaukee that typically is asked to think about audience engagement from a couple of different perspectives. It could be brand engagement because someone's trying to sell their wares to future customers. It could be helping to support a nonprofit who's trying to get their mission out to cultivate new members or donors. But we are also a very proud coalition partner for One on KE. And this subject is very near and dear to my heart because the origins of Milwaukee we can find even in our name, which is sort of a collapsed version of New Milwaukee. And when we started in 2009, our hope was that we could inspire our peers to find what they love about the city and to also change what they don't. We thought that by giving people a platform and access and exposure to things that maybe they weren't previously exposed to, would inspire them to be the change they seek. And so while I love all of our for-profit clients, some of you are in the room, who allow us to have us find audiences engage with your companies, this work is particularly important to me. And so I'm very, very excited to welcome my two Fireside Chat folks to it. So today, I want to jump in. As Joseph said, we are dealing with a time when cities are carrying responsibility more than ever for economic growth, workforce development, trust, and democratic participation. And yet, voter turnout and trust in institutions continue to lag in urban areas. And actually, thank you for your note, actually, about trust coming from Rena this morning. I just think that that is the point. That even the fact that you started by saying we need to establish some trust here points to the fact that we no longer have the same level of trust in institutions. And so, Joanne, I'm going to let you introduce yourself first. I know this group loves you. But then I'm going to have you answer this question for us. From where you sit, why is it that civic engagement is no longer a nice to have, but a core requirement for cities' long-term economic and social health?
Thank you, Angela. Milwaukee has given us a great ramp on to do lots of more engagement in Milwaukee. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Joanne Anton from Purple Philanthropies. I have a couple of disclaimers and then definition. First, I do not claim to speak for all philanthropy. I can barely speak for our own. So second, we are a new investor in the work that Cities Forward is doing. So full transparency there. We really are excited about what they've demonstrated and we wanted to invest in it. And then third, the definition. Joseph alluded to like civic engagement. What is it? It means different things to different people. Well, for us at Purple Philanthropies, it is one of our 3 pillars of investment. We invest in education, we inspire collaboration, and we want to spark civic engagement. And what that looks like for us, or what that means, and hopefully will translate into, is that we are strengthening public policy, we're strengthening communities, and we are strengthening voter participation. And how we get there is a lot of different ways. It can be investments in local journalism, something that we are doing. The educational reporter at the Journal Sentinel is one example of how we believe information is power. Investing in certainly all the traditional ways that you want to create voter awareness and voter participation, which is time specific, typical towards the election time. We try to stay away from election time though, we're nonpartisan, but we want people to be engaged early on in the process in how they get their information and how they make their decisions. And then other examples really are, again, things like Cities Forward. We have our own small grants program. They're called homegrown grants. They're intended to be offered to the entire state of Wisconsin to communities to do the kind of civic engagement work that we're talking about here today, to really connect with residents around a problem or a need. And then we will see with funding and hopefully help them either solve or be on the path towards civic engagement. So those are my quick introductions. And then the question about, is it nice to have or do we need it? Is it necessary? Well, obviously we are going to say it's necessary. I think for a long time it was nice to have and people dabbled in it. The reason I would say it's necessary for communities, in particular a community like Milwaukee, is because the alternative is really expensive. Disengagement has a cost. There are hard costs and there are soft costs. And I think we experience them We're experiencing them when people don't participate and they don't vote. We experience them when they don't understand things, referendum or ballot initiatives, or even just things like speed bumps in their community. And so it's an imperative to maintain that civic engagement early, before decisions are made, before budgets are allocated, and really get that buy-in. Making sure that people understand that there are going to be constraints, there are going to be trade-offs, and there are there's no perfect answer, but when people get engaged, the reward has been demonstrated. So before it is demonstrated through the work that they've done, but there's certainly other examples in Milwaukee of collaboration and civic engagement that is moving the needle. And so our belief is that it's also part of democracy too. So it's imperative to just build a stronger city with better outcomes that are co-designed and sort of co-produced by residents and by public officials and not-for-profits with that cross-sector effort that so many people in this room are already demonstrating through so many different initiatives. So I'll stop there.
I'm not going to ask you both to answer every question, because I think that's painfully boring on the panel. But I am going to have you, Joseph, answer the same question as we start here. Why is civic engagement no longer just a nice to have?
You know, I think it is. Perfect. Sorry. Hold on. All right. Sorry about that. You know, when I started doing this work, a lot of our work was really just about election-focused work during the heat of the campaign season. And when you take a step back and you think about a resident's experience and what that has looked like and felt like for many people in your state, that is a purple state that people invest a ton of resources in, people see that and they see people coming to the door and asking to vote. But when you have moments where you don't know how to gain access to the things you need for your everyday life, and you see the amount of investment that just comes in for an election, it doesn't motivate people to want to be involved. And that does have impacts in state policy and federal policy of what the living experience will be like for folks in Milwaukee. And if you cannot figure out how to get your trash picked up, if you're struggling with food insecurity, whatever it may be, I always like to say, when I was growing up, we had phone books, and you couldn't navigate a phone book better than you can navigate Google. Because Google has ads, they have predatory companies that are scamming people, they have things that make it difficult for people to find the solutions they need. And when we don't have systems and structures in place to be responsive to people's needs, but we ask them to vote, that's where we're seeing this erosion of voter participation. Yes, presidential elections are high, but our municipal elections in cities across the country are abysmal. It is about like 10% sometimes, if not lower. And these are the places that matter, because cities are the place where day-to-day things get done about your life. It's the roads, it's the trash, and if we don't have that infrastructure to support those needs, people are going to continue to disengage like we're already seeing. And so we all really need to think about where are the places that we can coordinate and make sure that we're delivering resources that folks need. Even if, one of the things I didn't mention, we do like a lot of fun stuff too, like block parties. Like people need to know their neighbors again. We need to, right now I was talking to Joanne about this the other day, and people are aging out of the volunteer roles that they played in their neighborhood, and no one's stepping in to fill those gaps. So how do we bring people together in a meaningful way outside of just talking about voting, but talking about their neighborhoods, what their wants and needs are, and making sure that we're creating a responsive government that can help them feel like their time is worth it.
So you talk a lot about trust and coordination and this lived experience. What is it that you've learned about why trust actually breaks down, and what actually rebuilds it in a practical and measurable way?
I mean, do you all trust institutions in our community? Like, we all have our own personal feelings, right, about what we think is broken, what we think is working, and there's no single right answer. But when you cannot figure out how to get something done in your community, whether you don't know how to do it or you don't have the skills, the other piece is when those things break down, your belief in your agency goes away, and you don't think it's worth your time, which is wrong, right? We need people to feel like it's worth their time to be involved in their communities. But trust is like any personal relationship. We've made mistakes. Our institutions have made mistakes. Our government has made mistakes, and we have to re-earn trust. And it's our belief at Cities Forward that if we show up consistently, we don't go away when election cycles are over. We fund block parties, we fund listening sessions, we're funding a neighborhood activation program where residents came together in 4 neighborhoods through listening sessions. And one of our neighborhoods is doing an Olympics between them, Washington Park and Washington Heights. In the park this summer, we're funding it for them, where they're gonna do grill-offs, and we're gonna come up with different activities. Maddie's and our program directors here leading that, but like, that is civic engagement. That is an active civic life. And I believe if we can do these things and help show people we're listening and we're gonna try, we don't have to solve all problems. We don't have to even have all the answers, but we need to be there and listen, and we need to consistently show up. And that's why we can rebuild trust, is by doing that work all the time.
Joanne, her profile in Breeze talks about civic engagement as something that has to be educated, energized, and sustained. Not, obviously, as we've said a couple of times, just during the elections. From your perspective, what does it look like when civic engagements fail to build trust? And what differentiates those that truly work? And I'm curious about this because you do see quite a different types of civic engagement efforts.
Sure. Well, civic engagement can't be turned on every 2 years or every 4 years. My background is in government and political campaigns, and the greatest insult you can ever get in public life is, oh, you just show up when you need something, or you just show up because there's an election. And so you have to work backwards from that and really, as Joseph mentioned, do invest in some of that fun stuff. How do you rebuild? How do you get people who live in a rented community to know each other? How do you get people who don't have sort of economic means, or who are faced with other barriers to the more traditional engagement? I mean, this mentality of just show up at City Hall to fight City Hall can't be the way that we do business in the modern age. And so, and I would say, as we talk about data centers and we talk about AI and all the different changes to our economy, and other things that are also changing and sort of contributing to the breakdown in trust, we have this one thing that computers and chatbots cannot do, and that is relate to your fellow mankind and humans. And so being able to connect on that human level, and again, not have all the answers, but know that you're in it together, that what happens on your side of the fence or your side of the zip code is happening to us, and we need to figure out a way to get there wherever there is. And so we've decided to put a stake in the ground to help not just support programs and not just support ideas, but to support the process that gets you to outcomes and solutions and even more ideas, but that are resident-led, resident-owned, that have that accountability factor in the neighborhood, not one that we're going to measure in an end-of-year report that someone submits to our foundation. So I hope that answers the question somewhat. It's about investing in people, and you all do it all day, every day in your businesses. And I think this idea of investing in civic engagement with a clear infrastructure is no different than roads, is no different than building an education system, it's no different than improving our healthcare system for that matter.
Joseph, Cities Forward's model intentionally, as you said, avoids creating new programs. Instead, it aligns with existing institutions. So that can be actual City of Milwaukee departments, the libraries, community organizations, other nonprofits, into the shared civic architecture. Why is that coordination such a critical missing piece to our urban civic life? And what changes when residents stop experiencing those institutions as fragmented or sometimes even competitive?
We I said this earlier, we know cities can't do it alone. And there are real realities right now with federal cuts to benefit programs, infrastructure for cities. There's budget deficits in almost every major city across America where programs are getting cut. If we cannot sustainably do this, if we are just bringing in new ideas and not looking at what resources we already have and making better use of them. So part of what we're launching this year is coordinating about 5 to 10 of our partners, mapping out where they do outreach and where their programs are, and identifying the gaps, but also giving them the tools to promote each other's programs, so that when we all know how expensive it is to get in front of a person and have a conversation with them. Those programs cost money, so we want to make sure that when we do have you, we're able to give you as much information about things that can help your quality of life, including fun events. And we're doing this because we know that we can rely on these existing programs and maybe things change. But as long as we can ensure the coordination can continue to grow, we're going to start small and continue to bring in other partners. We will then have more resources to share with folks that maybe wouldn't have heard about these programs in the past. And it's through that we think this is a coordinated response. And hopefully we'll rebuild trust with some of our local institutions and local government when we're seeing it erode across the country, right? And so it is the priority, and we do think that this is a more sustainable path that eventually cities forward can pull out and groups can continue to run this program with some support from local philanthropies, but specifically establishing this infrastructure. We hired someone in the city who's actually here, who's our civic region manager that works within the library, because we know that cities need that additional support right now. And ideally, again, these programs will get sustained on their own, but we want to help bring in the resources and data to make sure that we can do this properly and then continue on after move to another city.
Yeah, maybe I'll just add a little bit more color there. The hope with the internal city employee, Aisha is here, but she was right. Aisha, is that, I don't know the last time you guys went to Milwaukee.gov when you needed something, but sometimes it's hard to figure out what department you need to go to. And again, if you are already feeling like, why should I care about whether or not there's a pothole in front of my house, let alone be the one to report it to DPW and have it filled in. Perhaps you need a person who might be able to actually help you, almost like a concierge, navigate what feels like a complicated and sometimes bureaucratic system. And on the nonprofit side, this idea of the outreach consortium leveraging and marshaling each other's resources means that when you're interacting with someone from one MKE this summer at the night market per se, and you need food, you might also need rent assistance. Or perhaps you need a new carbon monoxide detector in your house. Those things probably are all true, but you don't need to go to multiple different organizations. Our outreach workers will be the ones that follow up with you and to actually ensure that you have the forms you need for actually enrolling and getting the resources and the responses, whether it's across the city or across these nonprofits. That type of infrastructure is what you're describing and currently doesn't exist. It's creating a new neural pathway for how residents, again, find what they love and change what they don't.
Angela's a very trusted partner of Cities Forward. We've been working with her for 2 years, and I'm sure we all know how pleasure as a partner.
Okay, so Joanne, switching back to you, talking to you as the funder here, you see a lot of great programs. I'm sure you deal with lots and lots of applications. What do you think philanthropy's role in this is? How is it evolving from funding initiatives to helping build durable civic systems?
Well, you're right. We see a lot of programs, and there's no shortage, no lack of programs out there to contribute to or to invest in. But what we're looking for is then what? Oftentimes we fund something, it might be for 2 years, it might be for 3 years. And then where does it go? And so it's something more durable, more lasting. We're looking for where is the staying power and where are the rest of the partners. There are so many great examples. I want to call out any and everyone who's associated with the Greater Milwaukee Foundation. I see some of my friends and former President and CEO Ellen Gilligan. I mean, what the Greater Milwaukee Foundation set out to do was really the utmost in civic engagement. And they put the first flag, I think, in the ground from the philanthropic community. And then, the United Way, they use similar techniques and tools to really tackle problems, but they're not telling folks what the answer is or how much money it's going to take. The community, they're bringing the community together, and the community is coming up with what the need is. And then those things come to us as funders, and we're not saying, oh, well, we'll only do that or we'll only do that. So looking at the evolution of the pilot, that is the traditional concept, right, of giving something a try, or even philanthropy's role in funding innovation, really looking more upstream, I think is the expression, like to really get to the beginning of how you might go about looking at a problem, bringing people together to try to solve and do something, but first understand the problem from the ground, and then introduce what possible solutions and levers of power and investment might be. So I think the evolution is definitely there. It's afoot in Milwaukee. So many wonderful organizations. Even the Greater Milwaukee Committee has been engaged in that kind of work. And again, with what you guys are doing and what other funders are doing, I think we have progress, that we've made progress, and I think we have direction to continue to do more to help develop more leaders in communities who can then bring about the kind of change that we're not just saying, oh, go talk to the mayor or go talk to the county executive or go talk to the governor and try to get something done. There's so much more agency in our communities that we have to, and so there's so much more social capital. And I don't like jargon, but I like those two because they're there and we need them in our community, and we have to bring it out rather than tell them what it looks like.
Joseph, Milwaukee obviously shows up through your work with Cities Board, but you work nationally as well, and you plan to use what you've created here with One MPE as a model as you expand across the country. I'm curious where service delivery, civic identity, and engagement are intentionally linked, and what made the Milwaukee Coalition work? What lessons have you learned, and what are you planning to take to other cities across the country?
Well, for starters, I'm an Angelino by way of New York. But I love Milwaukee. You guys are here all the time. This is such a great city, and you guys have such great infrastructure developments, like your libraries, buildings in here. They're just, it's a great place to be. And our work with One MPE and One Village Unite, in 2024, we did an evaluation of our programs with the Analyst Institute, which is a research firm based out of DC. And we did pre and post surveys before the election and after the election with the residents. We saw that we had a high response rate to our text survey. Industry standard is about 1% to 2% for a text survey. We had close to 10% response rate from our text program. People said they wanted to participate with government. People said they wanted to meet their neighbors. People remembered who we were. And that's because we consistently followed up as money. We text people about programs during the summer and winter. We do winter kits. We're consistently coming back to the people that we've connected with to make sure they have all the information that they need about what's going on in their community. And it's those learnings that we are now going to grow into other cities. Again, we're trying to find the right balance. Philadelphia is considerably larger than Milwaukee, and we had similar success, but not as strong in some ways. And that's why we invested more in Milwaukee, because we wanted to figure out what are the practices that we're learning that we can replicate in other cities, and how do we make sure that we're building on that. I'm struggling to say that like cities like New York, Chicago, Philly, are top 10 cities. There's a lot of infrastructure there that's fragmented and difficult to navigate for leaders and for residents and for all and so what we're taking from Milwaukee is really trying to do the same work in Detroit. We're going back to Detroit, we're going to Atlanta, we're looking at Pittsburgh. but we want to build these same coalitions because we think there's a right size of about like 300 to 500,000 residents that need this strategic investment to help better coordinate in the city. But our results in Milwaukee have been far and away beyond the expectation of one, because we brought in outreach staff to help grow the capacity. Two, we've made sure to maintain our programming in off-cycle years too, so that people are seeing this brand and understanding that we're consistently here trying to support and make these connections.
All right, back to you, Joanne. How do you see Milwaukee's civic ecosystem evolving in this moment right now? And where are we making real progress? Where do you think that structural gaps might still exist but maybe need some attention?
Angela asks really big questions. Okay, so I think the ecosystem is definitely evolving. Historically, Milwaukee is a city of neighborhoods, and in each neighborhood, there could be organizations that are duplicated across every neighborhood, faith-based organizations, not-for-profits that are doing very similar work. And that's who you would turn to historically to try to get some help or try to get some direction. I think the difference now today is it's not that you don't need all of those local entities, it's that they need to be connected in some way to best practices, to efficiency, to investment. And so I think that's where we're heading, and that's where we have gone. I would have added to Joseph's list, the question that he answered, is that just Milwaukee and Milwaukee Nice, Milwaukee has this truly collaborative spirit. And people who come here from outside just don't understand how much it is that I see Gil raising, nodding his head as new to Milwaukee, that people really do the outreach and try to figure out how can we work together. How do we not have to, spend double the money or triple the money, or the time, which is even more valuable, I think. And so I think that's where philanthropy has been going. And philanthropy now is not just seeing itself as a we're not, and I know others have said this too, other funders, they don't see themselves just as grant makers. They see themselves as conveners. They see themselves as system builders or part of the formula to help reform or build different systems to get better outcomes. So I think that's where we go as a community too, in terms of like where's that ecosystem from a funding perspective, really doing more of that the step back and collaboration, that we're not going to solve the problem alone. One grant is not going to make all of the difference, but if we're looking at it collaboratively and holistically from that broader community perspective, we can get a lot farther and have, I think, greater impact too. I think people protect what they build, full stop. So in neighborhoods, in communities in Milwaukee, the more you get people bought into building something together, they are going to protect it like nothing else. And the more we can invest in that and see it, the better we are as a city overall.
Yeah, I'll just say, when we were participating in the listening sessions last fall, I thought it was going to be a little hard to ask neighbors, like, what do you want to build? I mean, are people going to come with ideas? And people came with ideas. They knew that, like, there's that one roundabout in our neighborhood that people just drive right over. Like, why don't we put planter boxes or something, like a piece of public art, something that will actually make people use the roundabout and not ruin the bottoms of their car and cause all sorts of, like, terrible traffic issues. They live there already. They just simply needed someone to ask, what is it you would like to build here? Before they can simply go and do it. And in that case, we'll need to coordinate a little bit with DPW to make sure it's all built in a durable and safe way. But yes, residents actually live in these places. They know what are the points of friction that would make their lives a little bit better. All right, so this room is full of business and civic leaders who actually influence talent, investment, and regional momentum. I have a question I want you to both answer here, which is, what is the most productive role that the business community can play in strengthening civic engagement beyond maybe sponsorships or one-off participation?
Well, one, our coalition we need all the institutions in Monarchy and the cities that we go into to participate, because again, I don't think any single player can solve these problems alone. We already have a lot of bid members who are part of Monarchy Coalition, so that's one. Like I mentioned earlier, like the We Vote program, making sure your employees have an easy to understand voter guide that is just very fair and accurate is a good thing, right? Like trying to understand ballot measures or traditional races are all the things. Inviting a partner in to have that conversation with your employees. You're not taking a political stance, you're giving them the information they need and they're already visibilized, right? So like that's one. Two, whoever has ERGs, like figuring out how to utilize those groups to do some of this civic engagement work together and help build that community, that sense of community within your local culture, but also within your city identity. Our goal at Cities Forward is really to help develop those shared goals and shared identities. You know, the mayor came up with the name 1MPE, but we want people in Milwaukee to have that civic pride and that shared civic identity of what it means to be a Milwaukee resident. And that's the place where we think this is so important. So finding ways to support your employees that be a part of that culture, be part of creating that change within their city is huge, and people will appreciate it. I can connect you all to some of the resources that I mentioned earlier, but I do think, taking a nonpartisan stand and making sure that people are able to engage in civic life in a healthy way is a huge step in the right direction.
Same question for you, Joanne.
Well, I would say you're already doing it by being members of the Greater Milwaukee Committee. Anyone that's interacting with the United Way, you're already doing it. But there's so much more. We all have to do more, and we can do better. So to help institutionalize what we're talking about, rather than treat it like it's one more event or one more pilot or one more program. Defend the process that it takes a lot longer, right? Our problems didn't come to us overnight, and so they don't get fixed overnight either. So defend and invest in the processes that build towards better solutions. I'm a native of Milwaukee. I'm old enough to remember wonderful civic institutions like the Circus Parade and our annual holiday parade, and other things that really sort of brought us all together. And they were ways that we could all engage and be proud of our community. As those things have fallen off, we need to replace them. I'm not saying parades, but sort of the proverbial.
Could be a parade.
Could be a parade. Or maybe it's like a party on 6th in Wisconsin that you guys are famous for. But truly being able to replace it with other things where we know across our community we're all rowing in the same direction. And the business community has always been in that leadership role and always risen to the occasion. But thinking about it a little bit differently and not in your silo of, oh, well, we only do X, like we care about education or we care about health. Understanding the interconnectedness of all of those problems as well. Because that's something the city, I have to give credit to the city and our county leaders as well for doing things differently, delivering services differently, listening to residents differently, paying more attention to that, oh, we'll go to that office, And when you think about what the county has initiated with their no wrong doors policy. That alone, it's not just marketing. They've implemented into their operations and how, like, if you show up in need, you're not going to be turned away and told to go to some different building on the other side of town. City is also operationalizing that, and they're doing it with feedback from residents, and they're doing it to get different outcomes in the community. So again, I think those are all different ways that the business community has already stepped up and can continue to step up to.
One final question. The mayor isn't here. We'll open it up to questions until he gets here. Fast forward 5 years, Joseph, and Milwaukee is a city where civic engagement feels natural, inclusive, and impactful. I'm only giving you 5 years, so. What will we have done differently than what we're doing right now today?
I think it's just, what I would really is the things that Joanna had mentioned, where people feel connected to their neighbors, they feel connected to the institutions that are connected to them. They feel like they can figure out how to get an answer instead of feeling lost or confused. And people are working together to solve the problems of our city. It's that simple, right? Like, it is that connection piece that is so important. And, in our country right now, individualism is a huge issue for a lot of us. People are lonelier than ever. People feel isolated, and more opportunities to bring people together and real spaces where they get to celebrate, have a shared sense of community, have shared values, shared goals. That's our path forward, and that is what Milwaukee can look like and should be. And it is happening. I'm not saying it's not happening, but to its full totality, so that we can see it across the city and really make the strides that the city can employ.
And shared access too. What will look different? I think shared data, like if we could all get and have the same data so that when we're talking about certain populations or certain neighborhoods, that it's clear where help is being applied, where it's working, where it isn't working. I think data is the wounded warrior in these conversations, because we don't have clear systems for the same data. We don't have immediate shared data. I think about just in our world of education and where that data is. It's really hard, and so you're sort of operating in the wind without it. I think Amy Lindner and I once had a conversation like, boy, life would be so much simpler if we all knew like that, the customer, whoever's being served, if we all knew like what was all being poured into that customer. Are they getting help from the Boys and Girls Clubs? Are they getting help from the health department? Are they getting help served at Children's Hospital? Like, we don't really necessarily know all of that. And so we just keep pouring and doing more. And so shared data, I think, would be how we did it differently in 5 years, I hope.
Okay. Well, I appreciate both of you participating in this. While we wait for the mayor to close us out, I'm opening the floor to you. What questions do you guys have? Tina?
I can't get to my nephew unless I log into a gaming platform like Other than hand-to-hand combat, what are you seeing as some of the strategies to connect with their younger people?
I'm with you, Tina. I got a tutorial in Roblox this weekend. Texting. And anybody that says, "Oh, we're building a website," or like websites are important, but they can't be the beginning and the ending. There has to be apps. There has to be this technology. But I think, like going back to Joseph touting our libraries. If you don't know about the Milwaukee Public Libraries and how they are engaging young people and families and residents to use those spaces differently, you are missing out. They are like, yeah, you can go get books there, but you can go take a cooking class and you can learn beyond your wildest curiosities, and you can engage with people. So there are competitions and there's so many different things. So they're community spaces. They're no longer just shelves and rows of information in that traditional sense. And so I think texting, because everybody lives on their phone. So we have to have a way that we are in real time, IRL, or in real life, telling people what's going on and how they can engage and know about, and information, and then a feedback loop is established that way. And I think a feedback loop is just a different word for all the different ways that we described it. It's like, it can't be one-way communication, and it can't be top-down. There has to be dialogue, and there has to be real, transparent information.
And I don't represent them, but we do use Hustle for our texting platform for 1MKE, which allows us to send mass messages. Like this weekend at Washington Park Library, you can pick up winter kits if you need extra resources. But people can text back, and you can tag them if they've asked something on our end as organizers. And so you can actually follow up and know who it is you're talking with. And there's a human being on the other end of it from one of our team members who can say, all right, I heard you need this. Did someone actually get it back to you? Or quite frankly, like, how are you doing today? I mean, I just can't underemphasize how often people feel disconnected because no one is actually connecting with them, and knowing that it isn't just a robo-text, but it's Paula or Taj actually responding to you makes a huge difference.
I think that I agree with texting. I was actually at a birthday party the other day, where someone was telling about their kids' TikTok usage, and kids get together now and they sit in a room and look at TikToks together when they hang out, and they like don't talk to each other. Everyone's like, "What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Oh no, I feel bad as a parent, like because they have limited time, but they're with their friends and they're not going to be able to watch TikTok with them, and that's isolation." I'm like, "Is this for real?" It's like, wow. But you know, I really believe in like youth development programs, summer youth deployment, getting people back into third spaces, like getting people in front of each other again. That's why we wanted to fund block parties. Like we want to create opportunities for people to get off their phones and get off the internet and be in community with one another again. And I think children, I don't know if I'm older, but I do think it's important to try to push them back into the Girl Scouts are here. But like, you know, I think there's certain things that you learn from in-person engagement, whether it's play or being a Girl Scout, like, and it matters. And so like figuring out, making sure that we have enough spaces for kids to do that, like parks and libraries and additional, creating new third spaces, right? The night market, like these are all things that come together that force us to be around each other and in person. And I think the more opportunities that we can identify for especially young people to do that in a safe and productive way, the better. I think whether it's basketball, like we have a basketball coach here, like those are how people learn how to live in society together. And I think, you know, pushing kids to be in those spaces together is an overall and positive, I think, for our future civic engagement.
Amy?
Social scientists think a lot about dosage, like how much of something does it take to help the person you're trying to help. Is there an early point of view or an established hypothesis of like how much engagement does it take a citizen to go from a disengaged community member to an engaged community member?
I don't know. We are trying to figure that out. We are trying to play around with like, is it a quarterly test? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Like, we don't want people to think that they fell off our radar. We are trying to measure that. We still work with the Analyst Institute, and we're coming up with some experiment designs for 2026 to figure out like what is that right formula. Like, when I first started my work in nonprofits, did a bunch of controlled experiments in programs. And I was like, why can't you just listen to me and trust my gut? And no, we can't. You have to measure this and tell us if it's effective. And so I think right now where we're at is straddling this line of no one's doing some of the interventions and strategies that we're funding currently. So let's just do that right now and then think about what program design looks like. We are seeing the indicators from our data that, you know, we do get responses. People do feel connected to us. Milwaukee had a high turnout in the last several elections. So there are positive indicators that we've looked at. But we're still trying to find that right balance of like not overdoing it, but also making sure that we're learning from our playgrounds and experiences.
It's not really dosage, but I would say one other metric is just how many youth councils are there from block watches, resident councils. Those sorts of things are also, again, their own neighborhood feedback loops that you can try to measure, but they're in, by virtue of the fact that they are created and exist and are operating, feel like that's just part of, they fit into the infrastructure as well. So I don't want to take away from citizen-led initiatives too.
We have time here? Yes, there's one more question? Yeah, one question.
You began to speak to this a little bit, but how do we measure success in this topic broadly, and when do we measure?
That's a really good question, Kevin. For us, we are just at the very beginning, and we are investing in a spectrum of things. And so getting back to that earlier notion of dosage, when we invest in journalism, and then we invest in the La Follette School of Public Affairs, preparing the next generation of public servants. And when we invest in cities forward, and that we're really going to be taking the comprehensive look at where are all the touch points linked or separated, and see how we can look at where there are clear metrics, or just the need for that additional investment so that they can get to measurable outcomes. One of the other things that we want to look to are just city services, like simple surveys of satisfaction, right? Because in as much as you might get a resident council out of engagement, or you might get something else, that happens just by virtue of taking the temperature frequently beyond just asking people to come listen to you, I think is an important measure so that you can keep doing that work. That's a simple answer.
I mentioned some of our evaluations that we've done before. Right now, we're actually bringing in a tech tool called Civic Roundtable. It's designed specifically for local governments and how they share resources and information. It's like a project management tool that we'll use to coordinate our outreach teams. So across our CBO partners and city government, our first thing that we'll do is map out where programs are doing outreach and identify gaps from that, and then use our outreach teams to supplement where folks are not being reached to make sure that we're not leaving folks behind. And then we're also partnering with Remuneration, which is a foundation that creates, and it's called Organizer, where we're going to match all of our contacts to a voter file, and we have some models and data in there to figure out like needs assessments, et cetera, to make sure that we're prioritizing outreach to folks that are underserved, but also helping our partners understand. So most people don't know this, but service provider organizations like nonprofits, only about 10% of them do voter contact work. So like talk to voters, residents about voting. Philanthropy only funds about 1% of that work. But a lot of our partners that do that work are trusted messengers. They are people, whether you're doing violence interruption or you're doing the pain of in, whatever it may be, people know you and trust you. And where we want to support our partners on the ground is you are the trusted messenger that someone is going to respond to differently than just a random campaign person who comes up once every 2 years. From that, we want to give our partners the tools to build their capacity to get their own funding to do that work themselves. Because again, we don't need to create new organizations when there's already people that have demonstrated success from their own programs. And so we're bringing in that infrastructure through our data tools to make sure that we train them, we teach them, we show them which of their members are not registered, who are lower propensity folks, and really figure out how to have that engagement consistently, and going back to figuring out what are the number of matches or ways that we engage with someone to say that this is the thing that worked, right? And this is where, again, a randomized controlled experiment will come in. I hate that, but it is what it is. But I think if we do that well, we'll really be able to fine tune our work and have a more prescriptive model as we go into these studies.
Okay, well, can I have a round of applause for our panel? Hey, Mayor Johnson, you're right, right? You can close us out here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely.
Right, yeah, so I thought you guys were clapping as soon as I came in the door. It's like it came in right in the thing itself. Well, I want to thank Angela, Joanne, and Joseph for rounding the conversation. I think I sneak preview, so I didn't be in the room hard. What was going on there? So, as you heard, and hopefully know by now, civic engagement is not just a campaign. It's really infrastructure. This turnout is the outcome. It's an outcome, it's not the goal. The goal is good government that is trusted by the public. That's what we want to build, that's what we want to see as we move forward here. Now, you just heard why trust matters and how coordination changes outcomes. So I want to talk about what that looks like in practice here in Milwaukee and where we're going next in our efforts. So this organization, MKE, was launched intentionally as a coalition. Small, but now it's grown. They're like 130, 140, excuse me, right? That's good, that's great, that's awesome. Coalition partners because we know that while civic engagement is the city's role, the city on its own can't do it. Can't do it in a vacuum. So I launched this effort, one in Haiti, to solve a specific problem. And that problem was people who were feeling distant from their government and losing faith in government caring about them and, quite frankly, getting things done on the ground. This wasn't about telling people to care more. There are plenty of people in our city who care about what's happening on the ground. It was about more than that. It was about the government showing up and the government doing better by the people that were elected to serve and we sign up to serve in our daily lives. The most important outcome was in turn. It was about changing hearts and changing minds about what government is and what government can be. What I want to change, though, are the sentiments from residents. I want them to know not just where they need to go vote, but that their vote actually does matter, and that their leaders in government actually do care. I certainly care, but I want people to feel it. I want people to know that the folks that they elect and serve in government actually care about the issues that they're facing on a daily basis. Civic trust is a prerequisite for workforce participation, for stability in neighborhoods, for economic mobility, and quite frankly for the long-term success of our community and really any community. If people don't trust their city, nothing else that we talk about on a daily basis really scales. In population growth that I've talked about here a lot, that stuff doesn't scale. Public safety doesn't scale. Economic strength. None of those things matter. None of those things are able to change if there is not that trust. It's all connected. So here are my 3 things I want you guys to take with as a sort of a call for action. 1, treat civic engagement like infrastructure. All right, it's got to be tended to, it's got to be long-term, it's got to be coordinated, it's got to be cross-sector. It's worth sustaining and doing that beyond just when an election is happening. Right, and that's true for elected officials as well. Many times, people who are in elected office get criticized because folks will say, "Oh, only see you when it's time for an election." That's part of the reason why, when I was an alderman, and even now as mayor, as quiet as it's kept, I continued to go to doors after the election. I didn't stop from when I was initially elected in 2016 all the way until COVID happened. Every single week, I was out at the doors on people's porches, on their stoops, talking to them about the things that matter to them in their neighborhoods. We all need to do better in that. And again, do it beyond just when there's an election that's forthcoming. I want you guys to align. Don't simply duplicate. Encourage leaders to plug into existing coalitions just like this, just like one in KE, rather than creating duplicate parallel efforts. And number 3, to show us partners. Right? There's so much more that we can get done together, and you guys hear me often talk about the power of partnerships and the power of working together. That's what these efforts can be. That's when they are at their best, when we show up as partners. Not as spectators, but actual engaged, caring partners. Use influence, use institutions and networks to reinforce that trust. Model participation inside organizations and inside your communities as well. This work only succeeds if civic leadership, if business leadership, and community leadership all move forward. They were all holding hands, they were all rowing in the same direction, they were all singing off the same sheet of music. And I think that's possible in rooms like this. This work only succeeds that way. Milwaukee's future depends on whether people believe their participation actually matters. I think it does. I think that people in this room believes that it does as well. But that's the sort of chord that we need to strike with folks here in our community. So One Milwaukee is a big part of how we prove that it does. And I invite each and every single one of you to help us carry that forward. Thank you all so much, and thank you guys as well for being here.
Great discussion today. Thank you, Mayor. Thanks for closing this out. I want to thank all of our speakers today, especially those that traveled quite some distance to get here. Thanks for a really, really great discussion. Amy, thank you for being a host, gracious host at this place. We know that everyone in this room prioritizes community and civic engagement. Kristen mentioned it earlier. But how can we ensure that this becomes an outcome of our work? and a piece of the fabric of Milwaukee's community. We encourage all of you to stay up to speed with one MKE and Mayor Johnson's efforts. Creating an opportunity for all to engage in Milwaukee will build positive outcomes for all of our strategic pillars and then some. Please continue to do your part. Thanks in advance for doing it. I'm going to ask the GMC Board of Directors to come up here just for a couple of minutes. Otherwise, I'm going to adjourn the meeting. Have a great week, and we'll see you again.